Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I've had the flu, so if my voice gives out, you just have to bear with me, I guess. And this is an excerpt, and there's only one thing you need to know, and there's an old guy called Jimmy lurking in the background. This one is called Claire. Claire is sat in the U, flanked by two Black Panthers. We're not talking Huey Newton or Bobby Seale here, although that might also be appropriate. More in the line of Panthera pardus or possibly Panthera onca. Big, mean mothers, long, sharp teeth, twitchy tails, glinting green eyes, a lustrous sheen in their satin coats. Claire herself is also possessed of a green-eyed glint. She stares straight ahead, seemingly oblivious, but obviously fully aware of her companions. She has fluorescent green buds in her ears, a shock of red hair, shaven on the left side of her head to reveal tattooed flames streaming backwards. She's wearing a tee saying, "Kill all cars," black jeans and thick-soled shit kickers with a bunch of buckles on them. The Panthers are just overlay. The carriage rocks to and fro, screeches in the curve, stops at Han Plaza. People move in, get in and out. People move, get in and out, sweat, sniff, scratch, stare at the devices, mind the fucking gap, and mostly just try to limit sensory input. The U is a riot of input, a jungle of overlay and invasive personalized advertising. Even if you just do it old school, no overlay, no augmentation, it's hard to ignore the screens everywhere, vying for your attention. There's an old guy in the corner reading a newspaper, for God's sake. Totally analog. He's got his head buried in it and it rustles the pages every now and again. It's quaint, in a freaky throwback kind of way. Claire figures it's really just shielding, cladding, input reduction. The guy keeps his head down, rustles, avoids eye contact. Everyone avoids eye contact. Most just fiddle with their phones, worry their implants, surreptitiously wipe the pus from seeping wetware, noodle the weeb, perform the spastic eye movements required to check their incoming on their specs. But see you and raise you that most have their overlay muted or offed, just to minimize the danger of a P-won't. That's a psychotic episode while on mass transit, to you and me. Claire is not most. Claire is inured to that shit. Claire is a full-on overlay junkie. Although she gives no sign of registering zip, she has maxed the range on her expensive, stolen, state-of-the-art device and is taking it all in. She takes in the Jehovah's Witness with Moses coming back down the mountain with the tablets floating over his shoulder. Like, "Where you been, Mo?" "I just popped out to get my tablets." She sees two Salafis sat opposite each other, each projecting a mighty black-turbaned warrior with a long, curving scimitar held aloft. The scimitars cross just over the rear carriage window, and below them hangs the Holy Book, hyper-real and blinding. She sees an uncomfortable Nazi with flickering subliminal images of torchlight processions, rats and Riefenstahl. She sees a pretty guy with a big silver earring and nail varnish whose overlay makes him appear entirely blue. He's wearing a necklace of skulls and has 4 extra arms bearing, in turn, a curved blade, a trident, a severed head and a bowl. And she sees Nerd Boy sitting opposite, who has nada overlay but seems to be giving her the eye, evil or otherwise. To start with, she has him pegged for a tail. He's like, 19, 20, and a black hole. He has lanky dark hair, specs, and some piece of retro black box kit with the brand name filed off that he's actually typing stuff into. He's giving away nothing, but she can tell that he is hyper aware. She can feel him looking away every time her glaze flicks towards him. She can see the telltale ooze of fresh wetware from behind his ear. Is he onto her, or just coming onto her? Either way, he's up to something. She considers the tail theory, then rejects it as routine paranoia. He doesn't look like a cop. He doesn't have that narc spook slash cop vibe that we all know and love. But it's sure as fuck unusual to be rigged up to the eyeballs and just like hanging there. She hooks into the carriage CCTV and looks down on him. He has nice hands, like a musician. She can see his fingers flickering across some keyboard that he has nestling in the crook of his knee. He sat with one ankle resting on the other knee, turning his bent leg into an impromptu worktop. He has a beautiful curve from his collarbone up the side of his neck as he types. Get a grip, she thinks. He's probing your defenses. He's calling you out. She looks at him straight, eyes blazing. She's about to say something when she realizes the U has reached Carlos Marx. It's her stop. She jumps up with a semi-lunge into the guy's space. He flinches back in surprise and she's out of there. She comes up the steps out of the U and she's just stunned by the sunlight, the traffic, the mess of overlay, the noise. She stands there for a moment, taking it all in, thinking, what the fuck, savouring her anger and then letting it subside. She ignores a little red man saying don't walk and slides through a gap in the traffic, west down Carlos Marx, then sharp right into the passage, under the arch of the People's Opera, and she's out onto Richard and the Anglo-N Cave, then right into the Bee Village. She pauses for a moment, darkens her specs a tad, and adjusts the volume on her buds. Does a 360, spins slowly around. The beating of wings as a couple of pigeons flutter up to the nearest rooftop. The harsh glare of the sun muted through orange-tinted lenses. An old flatbed truck rumbling across the cobblestones. A bit of white noise in her ears as they start to max out from bud overuse. She checks her stats. Damn, something is seriously wrong. She's been tagged. That nerd boy fucker has fucking tagged her. Claire backs into the shade of the sloping entrance to an underground garage. She takes a moment to call up a scratch app and punches in a few coordinates. Then she waits. Nerd boy is not long coming. He's moving cautiously, scoping the street out to find her. He's got a trace on where she should be. He can see her tag, but she's having trouble locating her in meat space. He takes a step out past the brick corner of a sub-T garage and is literally yanked off the street. There's an arm around his neck and he can feel something sharp poking up under his jaw. The fuck you up to, nerd boy? He starts to struggle, trying to use his shoulders to wrench himself free. The blade under his jaw draws a little blood. His nostrils flare as he inhales a scent of summer sweat on her arm. Best calm down a little. She presses his wetwear patch with her thumb. Don't want you hurting too much now, do we? The fight goes out of him. He eases back into her heady, pheromone-fueled embrace. Better. Now tell me just what the fuck you think you were doing back there. Nothing. Claire applies the slightest bit of pressure to the handle of the blade. Okay, it was a tag. No shit, Sherlock, but only the feds and the spooks get to tag people. Are you some kind of spook kid? Kid yourself, you're not that much older. And no, I'm not a spook. So it's just a black tag is all. It's just a hack. Just re-engineered police issue. Claire glances out into the street. No traffic. Little old lady pedestrian coming up from Danube. What about you, nerd boy, says back over his shoulder. How did you project your GPS like that? Sugar, maybe you're not the only one can do a little hacking. Jimmy is returning home from his constitutional when he clocks two young people in a clinch in a garage entrance. That in itself is nothing special, the Bee Village being a favourite weekend venue for alfresco intimacy of all kinds. Not so common on a workaday weekday morning, though. Jimmy risks another glance. Interesting. She seems to be taking him from behind. Then he sees the glint of a blade. Jimmy stops short, adjusts his analog sunglasses, scopes out the situation. There's a tall and mean-looking punk redhead up close with a skinny guy with long black hair. She's got an arm around his neck, pulling him in tight, and in her other hand, she's got a stiletto blade pressed up against his carotid artery. So much more efficient than the jugular vein, thinks Jimmy. The woman hasn't seen him yet. Skinny guy is signalling wildly with his eyes. Do you want me to call the police or start selling tickets? Jimmy says. Claire sees an old guy smart-assing on the street and realizes this has turned into a situation. Get lost, jerk off. The old guy shifts his posture slightly, turns the back knee slightly inward, swivels his hips a little and lets his weight down on his back leg. Leading leg comes in with foot slightly raised. Shoulders relaxed, hands ready. Claire recognizes the setup routine for the Baijong, basic Jeet Kune Do combat stance. The situation now seems to be some kind of clusterfuck. Call me old-fashioned, the guy on the street says, but foreplay looked a little different in my day. Claire knows now that there's going to be no way out of this. not without a whole lot of nastiness. And you know, I'm all in favor of women taking the initiative. The old guy is still talking, but there seems to be quite a lot of bleeding going on. Claire feels the kid starting to twist in her grasp. Not breaking away, just turning. She relaxes the grip on her blade a little, looks out, long shot, at the guy on the street. He's waiting. It's her move. She pans back, close up, refocus, to see Nerd Boy fully turned now, looking straight into her eyes. Striking blue irises, pupils fully dilated. Claire pulls her head back slightly, just to check the rest of his face. They both blink for a second, lean in, connect, kiss. The old guy goes, do you mind? I've just had breakfast.
Woohoo!